What is going on, guys? Today we will be going over what I think are the biggest missed opportunities at the NFL trade deadline. The trade deadline was last week. We did have some good moves, and these are mostly going to be players who weren't traded. There are a couple players who were traded, but just to bad situations or whatnot. Either way, you'll understand later. Before we get into this video, I just want to say, we're on the way to 1,000 subs. Help me get there, and I will do a jersey giveaway as soon as we hit 1,000 subs. Either way, let's get right into this video. So our very first trade is Davante Adams to the Jets. This was a missed opportunity big time because Davante Adams is not going to be happy in Las Vegas. He came to play with Derek Carr, and well, Derek Carr's not been there in the since last year. And the Jets do really need a wide receiver, like a really true wide receiver one. I like Garrett Wilson a whole lot, but he has not proven nearly enough to me for him to be a true bona fide wide receiver one stud tier guy. He is a low-end one, high-end two at this point. And maybe he can develop. I would expect so. And also, with Aaron Rodgers, maybe he would have been a whole lot better. I'm going to give that complete credibility to be happening. But Davante Adams, I mean, not to mention the repertoire that him and Rodgers already have, it would be great. It'd be a great fit. They don't have the money. They'll figure it out. It's not an issue. Davante Adams needs to be a Jet, and I bet it happens this offseason. That's one I will say. It probably happens later this year. Moving on. We have Sutton or Judy to the Bills. The Bills have a wide receiver issue, in my opinion. That's why they took Dalton Kincaid, because they could line him up in the slot, they could play Dawson Knox at his true tight end position, and have Gabe Davis be the, bland receiver he is. Because that's the problem. Gabe Davis is a one-leg wide receiver. By that I mean he's going to go way down the field or he's going to run a drag route. That's about all he does. He's good, but he's not great. But you get another wide receiver, and that'd be great. Now, they can't really afford to have another Davante Adams, a guy that eats away at Stephon Diggs. But you get a Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton, a guy with a little bit more of something over, Khalil Shakir. Now, granted, they've kind of figured this out, especially in the last 2 weeks. But I just think those guys would have been a good upgrade and wouldn't have cost a whole lot either. Maybe a 4th or 5th round pick, honestly, and it would have been much at all. Bills would have gotten a really good receiver. Moving on from there, Montez Sweat to the Lions. He did get traded, but he went to the Bears. And that was an awful trade for the Bears. Horrible trade. They gave up another second-round pick for a guy who's going to be 28 next year. And he was an impending free agent this year as well. Granted, yes, they did sign him on an extension. That makes it a lot better. It's still stupid. It's still not a good trade because you gave up a second-round pick, which would probably have been one of the first picks of the second round, and got a guy who, yeah, he is pretty good. He's a pretty good player, but he's 28. You could have gotten a pretty good player that was 21, 22, and had him fit your timeline. In 2 years, when they have a new quarterback that's not Justin Fields, and that guy's still developing, Montez Sweat will be 30, and it's just not going to be good for the team. It doesn't make sense. Montez Sweat, I'm sure he's probably not the most happy either, other than he's going to get the bag. But a team like Detroit, if they got another real pass rusher, they would have been a really, really legit team, and it would have made them a lot more of a scary team in the playoffs, especially. Aiden Hutchinson with Montez Sweat on the other side would have been legit. Not to mention the rest of their defense playing well. The secondary's been a whole lot better this year. But yeah, it's just a missed opportunity big time there for Montez Sweat, really. It's not his fault, but that's really the biggest loser of that trade. Moving on, Pittsburgh Steelers, Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson was a heavy target of the Pittsburgh Steelers going into the trade deadline, and they did get, some phone calls in, making some moves to get Jalen Johnson, but they did not come down with him. They needed a cornerback upgrade. See, some people say that Patrick Peterson is horrible and he's not been good at all. That's not true. You just had expectations of Patrick Peterson, the Hall of Famer. If that same player was, Elijah Riley, a safety that a lot of Steelers fans know, if that was him making the same plays Patrick Peterson does, you'd say Elijah Riley was playing well. It's just because Patrick Peterson is a Hall of Famer, you think he has to play great, which I get the point. But he is 34 years old. That's an old age for a corner, so you can't expect that. Either way, Jalen Johnson tied with Joey Porter Jr., Patrick Peterson, and Levi Wallace. That would have been a heck of a secondary. Just the corners are all good. Patrick Peterson falling to your 4th corner, maybe 3rd corner, whatever you want to do, would have been great. Jalen Johnson is an impending free agent. I think that's probably why the Steelers didn't do this deal. They didn't want to give up too many assets for a guy who they can probably get in the offseason anyways. But also, this was good for the Steelers because they were able to make grounds on the player Jalen Johnson, showing him, hey, we're trying to get you. They didn't get able to make it happen, but maybe that will, swing his way during free agency, and he'll remember, hey, Pittsburgh really did want me. Let's go to Pittsburgh. Either way, missed opportunity there for the Steelers, getting a really good corner on their team. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys getting Derrick Henry. That would have been a big one. Tony Pollard, I told y'all, that was another one I told y'all. He's just not a bell cow running back. You can't expect him to be good. He was good as a secondary, a dynamic player, a guy you can swing out passes to, whatever like that. He's just not that kind of running back, though, that can really lead a team. Derrick Henry would have been that, and then having Tony Pollard taking a lot of reps from him would have been awesome. Dak Prescott's a very limited quarterback. Having Tony Pollard being, more of a pass catcher and out of the backfield, you can line up with both of Henry and Pollard in the backfield. It would have been insane. Would have been a great move for them. Ultimately, I don't really think the Titans wanted to trade Henry too much right now. But, this is another thing that maybe this comes down in the offseason. I really kind of feel like Henry will move this offseason. He's getting too old, but the Titans are trying to reset, but he's still been kind of good. It's just a weird blend of somebody else is going to have him, not the Titans. Moving on from Derrick Henry, we go to Saquon Barkley, another top-tier running back. He's been, the Giants' offense for years now. Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback, and now he's hurt. Saquon is the entirety of that offense. The Ravens could have really used him. Yes, Keaton Mitchell had a huge game yesterday. He had 140 yards on 9 carries. People are going to go grab him in fantasy leagues, and he's going to be starting next week, and that's stupid because he had 9 carries. He'll probably have 12 next week. That's great. He won't have 140 yards. I promise you that. It's not going to happen. And, Baltimore is a very high-running team, and he's been the offense for the Giants. Whenever he's played, they've been pretty good. Whenever he's not played, they've been pretty bad. So imagine Saquon Barkley in an already good offense, but adding a huge step to a certain position. Would have been insane. You would have had 2 running backs back there with him and Lamar. Crazy. That would have been a huge get for the Ravens. They were looking for running backs. They didn't find any in the market that were, valuable enough for them. I really think Saquon would have been good, but it is what it is now. Moving on from Saquon, the Chiefs getting DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is just not on their timeline, especially with Will Levis really being the predominant quarterback now. I don't see any way Ryan Tannehill plays the rest of this year for the Titans, barring injury. But the Chiefs need a wide receiver 1, and I think that is the biggest loser of the entire trade deadline was the Chiefs not getting a wide receiver. Oh, it doesn't matter. They're 7-2. Who cares? They beat the Dolphins. I don't care. They are not going to continue beating teams late in the season without extra help. You get Travis Kelce covered, Kadarius Toney's going to drop passes. Same with Sky Moore. Same with Rashee Rice. Unless Rashee Rice takes a big jump. He's the only one I have a little hope for that team. But DeAndre Hopkins gives you a surefire number 2 behind Travis Kelce. And, he's a very good player. He's obviously not washed. Maybe he's not as good as he used to be, but he's not washed at all. So, getting D-Hop would have been huge for them. I think they needed to. I really don't think there's a route they could go without getting a receiver this year and actually being super competitive. The first time they beat a good team was the Dolphins. But let's also think about the fact that the Dolphins haven't beat a team over 500 in 407 days. So, are they that good of a team, or do they just beat up on bad teams? I don't know. Moving on, Falcons should have gotten Ryan Tannehill. They are too good to tank. They just are. And Arthur Smith can't afford to. He's been too good. Ryan Tannehill, he's hurt right now, but he should be back in a couple weeks. And Desmond Ridder is not the guy. He's a career backup at best. Taylor Heinicke is a gamer. Taylor Heinicke can maybe make things happen, keep them in maybe a close playoff race, but ultimately, I doubt they make the playoffs with Heinicke starting. Ryan Tannehill, though I think he is very much washed, he would be the best option they'd have. I believe he's off contract this year. I believe, if I'm correct on that. It would have just made it a lot more valuable for the team as a whole. But, sure, you don't have a whole lot going for you anyways. Why try? Why not try? You have nothing else to do. You're not going to get a super high draft pick. So, take Ryan Tannehill and see how far you can go. Him and Arthur Smith do have familiarity from Arthur Smith's days as the OC in Tennessee. So, maybe it would have worked. Maybe not, but either way, it would have been an upgrade to whoever they have quarterback right now. Moving on, Seahawks getting Josh Uche. Uchenna Nwosu went out this year with an injury, and yes, they did bring in Leonard Williams. That was a good move for them for sure. Don't get me wrong, but that's an interior player. They needed help on that interior for sure. They were small in there, but the edge help would have done wonders with Josh Uche in there. Uche is a very solid player. He's not a great player, but he's very solid. Getting Uche on that other side of, I believe it's Boye Mafe, would have been good for the Seahawks and really just bolstered that defense extra. Patriots are probably going to be selling anyways. I don't see a reason why they couldn't have gotten him for maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick. Either way, I mean, maybe they didn't want to give up too many assets. They lost a 2nd and a 5th to the Giants for Leonard Williams, but either way, pretty big miss there. I think he wouldn't have been that expensive, and it would have been a good add for their defense. And the last one I have is the either tackle Dan Moore or Chuks Okorafor for, any of these teams up here. I say that because they all have tackle issues right now, but the Steelers have a surplus of tackles. Broderick Jones has stepped in the last 2 weeks and played very, very well. Broderick Jones has tools to be maybe one of the best, tackles, in the league in some time if he can continue this progression he's on. He just looks so comfortable out there. Played right tackle for the first time since 2020 on a short week and played great. That doesn't happen often. You don't get a guy moving sides, before the game and play that well. It doesn't happen. Would have been great to trade, Chukwuma Okorafor to the Bears for Jalen Johnson. That would work pretty well because they get an upgraded tackle since Darnell Wright has not been a good pick, which, I told y'all that one to begin with. And Braxton Jones has been hurt. He could play either side. Same with Dan Moore. Chuks is a little bit more flippable. He can play right or left, but Dan Moore's more of a left. But Packers, David Bakhtiari is pretty much going to be gone. I just don't see a way they bring him back after all of his injury issues. The Jets, trying to win something. Dan Moore would have been great for them to add since they can't stay healthy there. And also for next year with Aaron Rodgers coming back, that would have been a good add. Any of those teams could really have used them for multiple reasons, honestly. And most of them would play either side. Either way, Steelers could have used it to get an asset in Jalen Johnson for Chuks, a guy who's probably not going to play anymore with Dan Moore and Broderick Jones being the 2 starters. But, yeah, would have been a great move for the Steelers and the other teams for getting a tackle that plays decently at least. But either way, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, please comment, like, share, all that good stuff. And make sure you subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it does a whole lot for me and my channel. On the road to 1,000 subs, and I'm really hoping to get there by the end of this year. Either way, thanks for watching. Peace.